Saba Lakeshore Drive, Ryan, 29 minutes from 95th. I'm Chip Borkowski.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast. Clouds and sun with a stray shower. Will not be as warm as yesterday. High only of 70 and a low of 62 overnight. 64 right now. Next news coming up at 8. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
From the Matrix Home Solutions Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. You've heard us talking about Lydia Home on this program. Important work they do and been doing for a century. John Ebersole is the director of programs. Chip Borkowski is the director of development with Lydia Home. And this is about foster parenting for children who come from abuse, children who come from trauma, children who come from a home not able to care for them. That's what Lydia Home does. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
We're grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right, so John Ebersole, the director of programs, you sort of give us the overview of Lydia Home for somebody that's interested in either fostering a child or supporting the work that Lydia Home does.
Great. Well, I'll give you the continuum of care. We have what I call first responders that when a call comes in, when there's suspected abuse or neglect, DCFS investigates. And if there's something indicated but not so severe that a child needs to be removed, then we have a team of people that go out and help to try to keep the family intact. If the child needs to be removed and go into foster care, then we follow up with that. Sometimes kids aren't able to make it in foster care and need a more structured setting, and then they come into a residential program, which we also have, and we have a counseling center that helps along at all those levels. So that's kind of the continuum of care. We're really focused on needing foster families to step up and say, you know, we are willing to commit to, it's usually it can be a couple of years, 2, even 3 years, for us to open our homes to a child and provide the love, the structure, the consistency, and rebuild the trust that allows that child to realize not all adults are going to not care for them, and that they can trust adults again.
Have you seen an increase in the number of foster kids out there during COVID? Because I know some kids, their parents just didn't want them anymore. Dad didn't want them, mom didn't want them, so they just kicked them out and put them on the streets.
But enough about me.
No, come on,
no,
I didn't do that. But have you noticed that?
There was an initial drop in reports of abuse and neglect because kids weren't in front of educators and medical people, and now it's gone back up to where it was before. There are a lot of families struggling out there, and COVID has accentuated one of the biggest things with families, and that is isolation, and families who feel alone and unable to care and deal with the pressures. COVID has added an extra layer to that. There is no doubt.
Well, and explain your perspective on the tales that we hear often of the kid that bounces around to a bunch of different foster homes and foster parents, and it's sort of one bad situation to the other. Is this a function of the failure in Illinois of DCFS? Is it the foster care system? Is it a combination of the two? Why does that happen?
Well, that is a great question, and since we have all day to talk about it, I'm sure we'll be able to cover it in its entirety.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I understand those complexities, but yes.
I think that you hit on some of those things, that there are issues with DCFS. There are issues with people who are currently foster families, which is why we need more foster families. The families that are there are stretched. I just talked with our foster care director on Friday, and she was just having trouble finding a place for a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and so there's foster families that are they're stretched, and they're like, well, we need to take a break. I think the other thing is just in general, in our country, family is less important. And I think that those things together really contribute to making it tough, because it's heartbreaking to see what some of the kids. We had an 11-year-old that we admitted to residential last fall, about a year ago, and an 11-year-old had been in 11 different foster care homes, and it's heartbreaking that just adds to the trauma that these kids have experienced. Now, that's not the norm, but usually they've been a few different places.
Well, how do you prepare a family for taking in a foster child?
Well, that's a great question. There's 30 hours of online training with that, and we also provide coaching and shepherding. The other thing that we've added recently is a family coach who works with the children and the families, does some pre-counseling and prepping, some parenting tips, and we follow them along so that we don't just leave the kid and expect the family to deal with them, because parenting is hard work in the best of situations, and add on the extra layers of trauma and broken trust. It's a real challenge.
How do you guys measure success, and then what is your success rate with these kids?
Well, success is, when a child goes from residential, that they stay with the same place for 6 months, and that may seem like a short amount of time. So that is what we are looking at, and the other thing is for the child to stay with the foster family until either they're reunited back with their biological family, or they are able to get permanency in a guardianship situation or an adoption situation. So it's that permanency, it's that longevity of care to provide more stability for the child.
Well, I mean, do we have any numbers on what percentage of kids end up back with their biological parents once they've been in the foster system?
Well, it's somewhere between 15 and 20%, and the numbers have kind of flipped. 30 years ago, it was probably 80% went back to the family, and now it's probably the other part of that is probably 15 to 20%.
And how many children have you helped or partnered parents with foster children?
Wow, I don't have a good answer to that. At any point, Lydia is serving about 300 children and families. We have 100 of those are in foster care. As far as how many we've helped over the years, that is a great question. I don't have the answer.
Well, 100 years, that's a lot of
that's a lot.
That's a lot of people.
That's a long. You better start counting.
Yeah. Chip Borkowski is the director of development. So when you're pitching corporate partners, other people to support the work that Lydia Home is doing, what's the elevator pitch, and what's the data to back it up?
Well, the data is scary, and there's a plethora of data. But where we find success is when we have affinity with someone on a foundation's board or with the president of a company, and someone with just a big heart. And, because, most people know children, and most people can understand how these children deserve to be loved and safe.
And do you have success stories, kids that come back after reaching adulthood and going on to live their lives and find success, and that come back and sort of provide testimonials, basically, to what Lydia Home did for them?
Yeah, absolutely. We just had one gal who is the national champion archer, and she was on the Stories of Hope with us that runs on your station Sundays at 3 p.m. It was a wonderful story. She talked about, her life wasn't easy, but now that she's an adult and a mother, she can totally appreciate what Lydia did for her, and just giving her guidance and empowering her, as a child, so she could be a successful adult.
And with respect to Lydia Home, I mean, people who want to get involved to help, either as potentially a foster parent or just somebody supporting the organization and the foster parents, what do they do?
They could go to hopeforourkids.org. That's spelled out hopeforourkids.org. And they can learn a lot about Lydia. They can learn about how they can apply and find out about becoming a foster parent or donating or becoming a mentor or a volunteer. And all are needed.
Yeah, you mentioned the volunteer piece. So what are some of the things where Lydia Home is looking for volunteers? And is that maybe a way for people who may be interested in foster parenting? They're not sure. They're a little tentative, but this is a way to sort of see what it entails.
Right. Well, there are many ways to volunteer. You can come in the office, which is within the residence where we have 40 children, and help out in the office, help out in the kitchen. There are other ways when we have special events. You could do, a volunteer that way, or volunteer mentors is somewhat synonymous, and then they could actually commit to hanging out with one or more of the kids and maybe teaching math or, creating a book club. There's a lot of ways to get involved over at Lydia.
And then Christmas time is coming up. Do you need Christmas gifts for these kids?
Yeah, certainly. We're actually working on our list right now, and we are usually very blessed to where we get more than enough toys and clothes. But what really helps is if we can get gift cards for the kids, so they can really go out and shop and get that special pair of gym shoes and things like that.
And you've got, just in terms of locations, if people did want to volunteer, see the operation, come in and talk to staff, you've got several locations throughout Chicago?
We have one location at 4300 West Irving Park Road. It's right pretty much at the junction of the Edens and the Kennedy. And they could certainly come in. Right now, because of COVID, we can't give tours. But we certainly can meet with leadership and answer all the questions.
All right. And again, if you want to support the work that Lydia Home is doing, the website hopeforourkids.org. That's hopeforourkids.org. John Ebersole, Director of Programs. Chip Borkowski, Director of Development with Lydia Home. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan and Amy.
Thank you all so much.
All right. Thank you. And we should also